Ski Jumping Pro VR delivers the thrills of hurtling down a snow-packed ski ramp like no other game. Enjoy an ultra-realistic VR experience with the sensation of incomparable height and speed. Keep your balance and land like a pro to become the most successful ski jumper. A full single-player career mode and multiple tournaments make Ski Jumping Pro VR the ultimate winter sports simulation. Well, this is Ski Jumping VR, and no, it doesn't look that good. I mean, to be fair, they have taken it from a mobile game. You can see that clearly from the graphic style and the fact that it's only got 3 degrees of freedom in the movement around. There are presets on the game that allow you to change the quality of the graphics. I didn't see a great deal of difference in them, to be honest, and I can't imagine much of a machine not being able to run this. I've got a top-end machine right now, but I can imagine any potato could run this without any particular difficulty. The graphics are basic. They're not AAA game graphics, but we're not going to see that because the developer's obviously an indie developer, so that's expected, I suppose. For VR, it's adequate. They're not particularly detailed. The shadows aren't particularly superb. The quality of the textures is woeful. But again, you can't really expect much for something that is mainly a mobile game taken from probably a Gear VR or something. There are some issues even on the highest graphic settings. For example, the LOD is pretty bad. You can see in the distance there's actually a cut-off where the LOD just doesn't keep up. That's quite off-putting, I suppose. Especially when you're going down the ramp, you can see it quite clearly in some of the tracks. The weather effects are good though. The snow and fog and the nighttime jumps, they're quite good. The snow is a little bit basic, I suppose, but it does give you the impression that it's cold. The fog is very good. Jumping into fog is quite fun, and the darkness and light, nighttime and daytime transitions are very good as well. The biggest problem I have with the graphics, I would say, is there's just simply no sense of awe. When you put your headset on and to be in VR, you expect a sense of sensation of being there. You know, you're actually part of the game. You're in the world. There's none of that in this. There's no sense of depth. There's no sense of speed. When you're jumping down the track, you're not feeling the speed of the wind rushing past your ears. There's none of that at all. I don't know exactly why that is. Possibly because of the limited amount of motion, as I mentioned earlier. That definitely does make a difference, I think. Especially when you're leaning left and right and nothing happens. That's quite off-putting. And the other thing I don't like about the graphics in this game is they're so basic in terms of what you can see. You're a skier, you have skis and you have boots. But apparently when you're out to jump down the hill, you can't see your legs or your arms. They don't exist, which is... it's a bit bad, let's be honest. There was no real reason why we couldn't have arms and legs in this game. It would be nice to see them, especially considering that there are some customization options in the game that allows you to change your jacket, your helmet, that sort of thing. But you'll never actually see them because you can't see yourself unless you're actually looking at yourself on the main menu. Yeah, not brilliant.
No, some sound effects in the game make sense, like the breathing just before the jump and the countdown beeps, but there's not many other sound effects in the game. There's no sense of wind rushing past, there's no sense of speed as you go down the slope. It's just not quite right. There's an irritating when you land on a jump. That's also quite irritating. I mean, I'm sure that real ski jumpers do make that sort of sound when they land, but I would imagine it doesn't sound exactly the same every single time. So yeah, that's quite irritating. The music in the game, very bland, very uninspiring, probably just a copy of music they've got from some royalty-free place somewhere. It's not really fitting. I don't know, there's just something very basic about the whole thing. There's no presentation. The way that the sound is presented is very basic. It's just not as good as I think it could be. There is character customization in the game as well as skill training. This is paid for by money you win for jumping well, and stars are given for performance bonuses. These can be used to increase your skill levels, including things like landing, jumping, stamina, that sort of thing. The idea being is that the more you do the events, the better you'll get, the further you'll jump and the more you'll win. The issue I have with this particular aspect of the game is that it's just so easy to win. I didn't even know that you could do this in the beginning, so I was definitely not aware that you could increase your skill levels. However, after say 20 minutes of playing, I managed to land every single jump perfectly. My scores were almost exactly perfect, and I was winning every event I played, and I eventually ended up winning the first career cup. I forget what it's called now. So the idea of having skills to build up are absolutely pointless if you don't actually need them. The control method for the game is also a bit unusual. You don't use your head at all for leaning because, as I mentioned earlier, there are only 3 degrees of freedom, so you can't do it. Okay, so the way that the control works is that you push off by using both your hands to push downwards. This pushes you off your seat and starts your descent down the slope. You use the left and right hands to control your balance. So for example, if you're tilting to the left, you would then bring your right arm down, your left arm up, and that will correct the balance, and you do the same for the other side. You keep doing this until you get to the bottom of the slope, at which point you then push both your hands sharply downwards. This initiates the jump. You then spread your arms out wide in a kind of a V shape, and this imitates what you see on the screen with your skis, and then you would use the same method for moving up and down to keep your balance until you get to land. To land, you pull both your hands sharply downwards at just the right time, and then you initiate a landing. And that, my friends, is the entire game. There is absolutely nothing else to it. I mean, yes, okay, it does take a short amount of time to understand when to use the jump and when to hold it, but it doesn't take long. And the moment you understand how it works, it is just so easy to win every single time. It's trivial. There's no challenge whatsoever. You get top scores every single time. There's just no point. It's just completely dull. There's absolutely no variety in the way the game works. You can have all the skills you like, but it's not going to make any difference to the way you play the game because you're going to just do it perfectly every single time. The mechanics of the game are just not sophisticated enough to earn the pro monkey they've added onto the game title. For example, the calculation line, which is the average jump distance of the hill you're jumping on, doesn't mean anything. So when you make your jumps, you never reach it. I don't think I've ever reached a calculation line in any jump I made, and I still managed to win every single time. I imagine that if you increase your skill set to a much higher level, using the point I mentioned earlier, maybe you'll be able to reach that line, but it makes absolutely no difference at all if you're going to win. If you don't get to the line, it just doesn't matter. The other majorly disappointing part of this game is there are no physics. There's no jumping physics. It's all animations only. There's no wind effects. There's no sudden gusts that give a second flight as you see in ski flying. It's just a purely scripted animation from the top of the hill to the bottom, and that's it. I don't believe that you can call a game a pro game if you haven't got all the aspects of that game or the sport that it's trying to emulate. I mean, even if it did have some wind and gusts and slightly random things to make you having to work harder, that might have made the game slightly more playable, but as it is, there's none of that whatsoever. The only difference the wind makes is on your scores. There is no other difference. It obviously affects your distance when you jump, and it affects your scores because the game says that you took off too early. It's not right. It's not very good. Now, none of this would be a major concern if it wasn't for the price. This is $16.99. We're talking £17 here, folks. £17 for what you get. This is a ludicrous amount of money to pay. It offers no challenge, and while winning is fun, not losing is much less fun. For £17 for this type of game, I would expect there to be a lot more content, and it is just not there.
No,